Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. A tale of love, a triumph, and a tragedy. A man once existed, went by the name T, but no one recognized him nor knew his name. He traveled vast lands in an attempt to find that special someone. Nobody knew what this person might hold or might give him, but they knew they meant something to him, something that couldn't be given by any other ordinary person. He traveled miles upon miles, searching from the bottom of the Great Lakes to the highest peaks of the highest mountains, never seeming to find this special person. One day, he stumbled upon a small village located not too far from a great city said to have held the richest and most valuable items. He hadn't expected to find this someone in such a place made from stone and old empty buildings once used to serve almost everyone's needs. The town lay almost empty upon his arrival, with the occasional village person happening to stumble by from what stores still remained. There he found someone so true and very beautiful, a woman who held many secrets but shared no care in informing the occasional person when asked. She had a smile that seemingly lit up the valley the village was nestled in. She had locked eyes that attracted many but could only be unlocked by one. When the empty keyhole that was her eyes was unlocked by one man in particular, this man being T, they stared at each other as if they had known each other their entire lives. They shared a smile and began an interaction. They laughed, their laughter sending waves of joy around the valley, creating a spark of love. These two eventually began a partnership that would last a millennia. They talked about great things and their dreams, their weaknesses, and their sorrows. They talked and talked and talked until they both ran out of things to laugh about. It was only then that they saw each other for who they truly were, a broken man searching for love and a beautiful woman who had never felt true love. This created a bond unlike any other, a bond strong enough to hold continents together. They spent days together, then weeks, then months, and eventually years, all the while under the influence of love. They danced in never-ending fields of beautiful flowers. They hugged and kissed in the rain. They stayed inside and laughed while it was cold out. They stayed outside to enjoy the cool breeze and fresh air when the temperature allowed it. It was perfect. Neither could deny it, and neither could the townsfolk. They all knew the couple and what they had been through. Their echoes of love always cried out from the place the two called home, their laughter, their cries, their smiles, their frowns, their ups and downs. It was like a dream, but eventually one does have to wake up from a dream. They both began seeing each other in a different light, arguing from when the sun rose till the sun set on the horizon. Some days they'd even hide from each other to avoid a conflict. It cut them both deep, a hole in their hearts, a hole that was as deep as the great ships at the bottom of the ocean. They ran away from each other, vowing to never see each other again, only to return once more to apologize and rekindle their love. This cycle continued day in and day out until T voiced his concerns to his beloved. She was worried at his sudden willingness to show emotion, for this was unusual for him. He explained that the two had been at each other's throats almost every day, non-stop bickering and fighting. He promised her that in the areas he lacked, he'd be better and give his all to ensure it, only if she did the same, for it was clear that the two had their own problems. She vowed to do the same. Her love for him couldn't be held back any longer. Though they fought, they had loved one another for quite some time, and there were reasons for this love. Over the course of a few years, they not only rekindled their love but grew together, knowing that arguments were not just going to disappear at the drop of a hat. They had learned to live with this factor, proving that their relationship was real and never a dream. They continued this love for a long, long time until one day, an unusual announcement came from the man. It turned out that he had been diagnosed with a disease that couldn't be treated. The doctor offered medicine in an attempt to prolong the inevitable. The man was reluctant, but seeing the fear in his other half's eyes, he knew what he must do, so he agreed. Over the next few months, his condition slowly deteriorated, worsening with every cough. She knew he hadn't much longer to live, and so she began preparations at his command. He knew what it meant to him, and what it meant to her. He watched as she prepared for when he was gone, though she couldn't come to terms with it. It was like this for quite some time. The man got worse, and the woman broke more. Even in this time, they still grew together, grew to appreciate every moment, grew to appreciate each other's smiles, and grew to appreciate each other's time. It was then, and only then, when the man felt sick unlike anything seen by that point. The woman rushed her husband to the doctor, and to their dismay, the clock was up, and the man was given a day. They wept in each other's arms, for both of them knew what this meant. The man had to go. It was here that the woman thanked her husband for finding her, but her husband told her these few words: "No, my love, it was you who found me, it was you who saved me, and it will be you who will be here with me in my final moments. Our time together shall always take away from the time we're apart. As long as you have me in your mind and your heart, I shall be with you. No amount of dirt, air, or time will keep me away from you, for you are the only girl meant for me." The woman wept harder than she ever did and hugged him, knowing this was going to be the end of their time together. They fell asleep that night, and only one woke up. The woman was distraught with her loss, but still kept moving forward, for that's what her other half wanted. She watched as he was lowered into the ground, this being the last time they would ever see one another. Dirt began to fill up the hole, much like their love had filled the holes in their hearts. She fought through the tears and walked to the tombstone with the words, "I'm honored that you searched for me through thick and thin and stayed by my side through thick and thin despite everything, my love. I love you to the end of this world and back. We shall meet again, for our love is true and strong. Goodbye, my dear." As she stood up, the only thing left was a tombstone drenched in tears with the words, "No amount of time, dirt, or air shall keep me away, for this world holds one thing I cherish the most, my beautiful girl." The woman stepped foot in their empty house. The ear-piercing silence surrounded her. She sat down at the dining table where they had always laughed and messed around with each other as she stared out the window towards the mountains. There, a beautiful sunset was going down, a sunset that had given the same energy and delight as he once did. It might have just been another sunset for everyone, but for her, it was everything. Story: 3 months I've been single. It's been 3 months today that I became a single man again. For the better part of 6 years, Celia and I have been serious and exclusive. We've been kicking around the idea of marriage, but her job as a union negotiator keeps her on the road about 25 weeks a year while I run a CNC shop with a dozen employees. We're both considered successful, and neither of us thought a piece of paper with the government's approval stamped on it would make our life better. We don't have kids and neither of us has family in the area, although her parents call her at least once a week. Mine are gone and my sister died a dozen years ago in a traffic accident. We vacationed together, played and enjoyed life together. We were never in each other's hair, and even when she was on the road for weeks at a time, every day or two she'd call me, or vice versa. We were simpatico. Once I made up my mind 6 years ago, there was never anyone else for me even though the opportunities existed. She and I agreed we would share our love with no other. Until the 4th day of the 4th month of the 4th year of 2020. I was awakened by a phone call just before 5 in the morning. I guessed it was Celia because she was 2 time zones ahead of me and she knew I woke up at 5 a.m. Good morning, babe, I said as I answered without looking. The voice was hers, but anger and attitude was not. James called me, she said, referring to our closest friend who lives in another part of the city. Is everything all right? I asked, concerned, both by the timbre of her clipped words and the sound of sadness I'd heard before. No, Mike. He told me you were out with someone. He told me he saw you buying clothes with someone he'd never seen you with before. Son of a bitch, was all I got out before she went on. I'm going say what I have to say. He was curious and saw you pay for everything and help her carry it to your truck. You two kept looking over your shoulders like you didn't want anyone to see you. He followed you, because you know how James is, and he saw you take her to dinner and then to our home. He waited for an hour, but she didn't come back out, and once all the lights were off, he went home, knowing she was spending the night. He talked with his wife, and it took them 2 days before they called me to tell me what he saw. Pack up all my stuff and put it in storage. I'm never coming back to that house again. I trusted you, and that trust is now gone. You were. I interrupted her and tried to explain, but after my first words, let me explain. I heard click. She'd hung up on me. I won't detail the extents I went to in an effort to tell my side to her. All contact was cut between her and I, James and his wife and I, and any of a number of common friends we had. All the ways you can think of to contact and explain, I tried. Just so someone knows, what James said was true, but the story he told was without context. James did not know I was buying clothes for a woman who worked for me. Her boyfriend had slapped her around a good bit. She came to me to tell me she was quitting and moving to Minnesota to live with her aunt and get away from the abusive relationship. As we were talking, she told me what had happened to her and how going home for her to that man was dangerous. She asked if she could sleep in her car in the gated parking lot of my company. I told her no, that she could stay with me and I'd personally keep her safe. While she sat in my office, I booked a flight for the next morning. Since it was late in the day, I asked if she wanted me to escort her to get anything from where she was living, and she told me most of it had been destroyed in his drunken fit of rage the previous night. Even her car had a broken windscreen. Most of my employees had gone home, including my assistant, so I told her we were going shopping. She tried to stop me, but she'd been a valued member of my company for more than 3 years and she could program as well as anyone. I hated seeing her puffy eyes and defeated shoulders. She was a valued employee, and I would miss having her on the floor. It was the least I could do. We went to the store and got her a few changes of clothes, some toiletries and other things she'd need for the next week while she settled in with her aunt. We kept looking around because her phone kept bleeding for attention from him. She refused to answer. After a quick meal, I took her back to my place. I have a couple of spare rooms and one is made up for friends. While we talked, I wrote her a glowing letter of recommendation she could use for when she got where she was going. It might have been her first good night's sleep where she felt safe in a long time, and I dropped her off at the airport and was back in my office at the usual time. Now, looking back, I should have called and told Celia what I was doing, but I was only thinking of helping someone who needed help. I didn't want to spread my former employee's dirty laundry over the phone. I thought telling Celia what I'd done when she returned would be good enough. I didn't expect James would be telling her what he'd seen out of context. I didn't think Celia would think I'd ever step out on her. I didn't think my life would be the hell it has become. Story forever interrupted. Me, 20-year-old, met Emily, 19-year-old, when we were 2 and had been friends on and off until we became best friends freshman year. She was always a bit different and really weird, but in a cool way, and she was never made fun of for it. We just made sense as friends, and everyone knew us as Emily and Claire, the best friends. When epidemic hit sophomore year, we were inseparable. We spent every second together. My mom never liked her, but I could never see why, and most people looked at her as controlling due to my not hanging out with any of my other friends, but I never saw it like that because I had the best time with her and honestly would choose her every time. I had a boyfriend at the time who she hated very much and didn't like me hanging out with him, but he lived far enough away that I didn't see him too often anyway. Emily started being a bit more interested in boys and was dating around a bit before meeting Braden, whom she dated for around 5 months. We both got broken up with at the same time. I think this is where things started to go downhill. Emily handled her breakup rough. She started doing crazy things that I would just go along with, like driving the 40 minutes to his house and sitting outside waiting for him, or taking pictures of his house and sending them to him. She constantly stalked him, called him, and left voicemails, but Emily and I were so close that anything she did was an exception, even if I thought it was crazy. I would even go along with it. After this, Emily really started sleeping around and meeting with lots of different guys to hook up. I was totally for it and even encouraged her to have her hot girl summer since Braden was her first for everything and she handled it so rough. I can't remember why, but she ended up losing her car for a bit, probably got grounded, and she had come up with a plan to meet up with this boy an hour away, and of course I went along with it. Since she didn't have a car at the time, her plan was I would drive her the hour away, and then when we were 2 minutes from the guy's house, I would pull over and get in the trunk, and she would drive the rest of the way to hook up with him, and then we would drive home. We make it there, and within 1 minute after the switch, she crashes my car with me in the trunk. We were okay other than a little bruising, and my car was totaled. We ended up lying to the police and saying I crashed my car because her 6 months weren't up yet and I didn't want her to get in trouble. We slowed down after this and stopped acting so crazy. I got a boyfriend, Tyson, 17-year-old, but Emily again hated him and would limit our time together. While I was with Tyson, I liked him so much, but the second I'd be around Emily, I would question our relationship because Emily would just say bad things about him. I actually ended up breaking up with him at one point. Tyson hated Emily but never said anything because he knew we were best friends and he just got over it. My mom was constantly trying to get me to stop being her friend because I was really innocent and never got into any trouble before her. She also told me Emily was being very manipulative, but I never saw that because, in the end, I thought Emma was a great best friend, and I made those decisions too. Tyson and I got closer, and I started spending a bit less time with Emily. She met Landon, 17-year-old, whom she went on a date with, and instantly fell in love, that's how she put it. I was friends with him at one point, and he came from an incredible family. He was just a great guy, so I thought this was good. They ended up hooking up, and Emily came to me to tell me all the details and how amazing the sex was. A couple days later, he broke it off due to him not thinking his family would approve, and the day after, she says she's pregnant. She wouldn't show me the test, but why would anyone lie about that? Of course, I believed her. Landon knew he would get kicked out due to getting a girl pregnant, but he also knew he wouldn't abandon his baby, and he'd have to tell his parents, so he took all his savings and went out to buy his own car so he would have somewhere to sleep. Landon's friends knocked some sense into him and demanded to see a test that Emily would not provide. Thinking about it now, she could not have been pregnant 3 days after hooking up, and that would not show on the test. When Emily refused to take the test, I got so upset with her, and this is when I decided to back away from her a bit. Emily also accused Landon's friends of kidnapping her that night after I left, but I was not there, so I don't know what actually happened. Emily's mom found out about all of this because Emily ended up accusing Landon of raping her that night, so the police got involved. Emily was no longer allowed to hang out with me because I was a bad influence on her. A week after all of this, Emily said she fell down the stairs and had a miscarriage. I completely stopped being friends with her after all of this because I was hurt, she didn't stand up for me, and I stopped believing her lies. Tyson and I stayed dating, and when we finally went back to school in junior year for hybrid, there were lots of rumors about how Emily had another faked pregnancy. She was a huge topic around the school, and everyone knew about what had happened. Emily and I ended up reconnecting over the summer, going into senior year, but I ended the friendship again because I found out she was tracking my location without my knowledge. She reached back out again towards the end of senior graduation with a huge apology, and she told me she was seeing a therapist and had been dating a really good guy. I was a lot more careful, but over time we grew closer, and she had no mess-ups. Tyson was not supportive of us being friends, and he was so worried for me that I assured him that she had changed. She had switched her career choice 3 times, and I was living at the fire station as a sleeper and going to school to be an EMT until I had a horrible call that made me realize I couldn't do it anymore, and I went full-time to being a barista and babysitter on the side while she was in online school trying to figure out what she wanted to do and also babysitting quite a bit on the side. After months of us rekindling our whole relationship, Emily presented this whole idea to me about starting a daycare business together and gave all the details and how this would work, and I loved the idea. I put in my 2 weeks and took all my tips I had saved for a deposit, and somehow we got approved for a cute little apartment while we started getting certified. We got donated books and toys and got a bunch of things from Goodwill, but it came together really fast, and I was so excited because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I loved kids, and this sounded like a perfect career for me. We were barely going to make it by, but I had enough money saved to be there a couple months with no income until we started getting kids. I also want to add that the first day we moved in, I ended up winning the bigger bedroom 3 times, and she threw a big fit and said she would just live at home, so I gave it up to her. She also decided she wanted a puppy after we decided that wasn't going to happen, so that caused a huge fight. She was nasty to live with, and I don't even want to go into details about the gross things she would do. After a month of living there, I went to stay with Tyson for the night, and I got 3 missed calls from an unknown number. They left a voicemail, and it was the police. There had been a break-in at the apartment. I was freaking out, and so was she, and she told me that I had to stay at the apartment more often and not with Tyson because she was so scared. She also told me she was going to add a sliding lock on the door, and I have to be home by 11 o'clock every night or I wouldn't be able to get in even with a key. I fought this and said that was not okay and that I should have access to my apartment at any time, but in the end, she said she was going to do it anyway. She then tells me she's going to back out of the business, and it's all mine, but she's going to continue to live there and pay rent. I was so stressed during all this because I didn't know what I had just gotten myself into. She got the puppy she wanted so badly and never cleaned up after it. I started resenting her to the point where I could barely even talk to her, and our living together was very toxic. I also forgot to mention we got a Ring camera and extra protection around all the doors and windows after the break-ins. She was also cheating on her boyfriend, whom I believe she's still with due to him not knowing. Anyway, 2 months had passed since I lived there, and I went to stay at Tyson's, and there was another break-in. I had been kicked out of the Ring, and she had said it had stopped working. I did not believe anything she said at that point. I talked to the cops and told them everything I knew and what I had thought, and they straight up told me they knew about her fake pregnancy and how her story didn't add up at all, and they think she's lying, and I agreed. She calls me the next day, saying she wants to save our friendship, and we clearly can't live together, so either I need to move out or she does, and I have to make the decision. At this point, I knew I couldn't afford it alone, but I had hope I could get more kids. She told me I'd have to get a roommate because I couldn't do it alone and that I should just move out and her boyfriend can move in, but I didn't want to throw everything I just started away, so she moved out and never spoke to me again and also refused to get the lease. We have not talked to this day, but whenever I tell this story, people are blown away by how insane she was. I do not know why I stayed with her friend for so long. I guess I only see the good in people and have way too much trust. I was clearly very manipulated by this whole friendship. The second she left, my business blossomed, and all my spots filled. I lived by myself with no roommate for the rest of the lease and made really good money. The lease just ended 2 months ago, and Tyson and I signed a new lease on a brand new house for my daycare. I am absolutely in love with my job, and I couldn't ask for a better life with Tyson. I'm so happy I got rid of that crazy toxic friend, but I guess I wouldn't be where I am today, at age 20, without all of that happening. Story: the love story of a friend. I couldn't sleep, so I thought it'd be a good idea to walk to the park and stare at the sky. So there I was, in my yellow t-shirt and blue shorts, reaching my destination. There I saw her, looking at the sky with ginger red hair coming down her shoulders and blue eyes glittering in the moonlight. It was Laura from my class. Her gaze shifted from the sky to me. "What are you doing here, this late at night, Aiden?" she asked. I never talked to her at school. She's one of the quiet kids in class. This is the first time I'm hearing her voice. And she usually wears glasses at school, but she wasn't wearing them right now. I took a seat beside her. "What are you doing here?" I looked her in the eyes. She shifted her gaze back up to the sky. "The moon's pretty. I always come here at around this time, every single night for stargazing." I looked up at the sky. "I couldn't sleep, so I came here," she giggled. "You couldn't sleep, so you came here to stargaze? Will that help you fall asleep?" "Well, what about you? Why are you always coming here?" I asked. "Like I said, I always come here, because I get bored and sometimes because I can't sleep. It's dangerous here, you know? You could get kidnapped or something." We chatted a bit and had fun. "Why do you not talk like this at school?" I asked. She shrugged. "I guess I don't like socializing. I'm shy and don't have friends to talk to." "Then how come you're able to talk to me?" "Well, something tells me that I can trust you." She smiled. "Well, see you at school tomorrow." "Good night." We both went home next day. I was walking to my class when I saw Laura and a bunch of other girls surrounding her. I saw one of them slap her and throw her glasses onto the floor. They walked away. I was running toward her. "Are you okay? Why did they do that?" I asked as I picked up her glasses and put them on her. "I'm fine. I'm used to it." "Thanks." She quickly rushed away. It was lunchtime and I saw Laura by herself. I walked to her and sat at her table. "Why are you joining up with me?" she asked with concern. "Is it against the law to sit with you? You seem lonely." I asked with a smile. "People call me a witch because of my red hair." "I hate this red hair. I think your hair is pretty." She looked at me and smiled. "Thank you. I knew I could trust you." I suddenly had an idea. "Hey, wanna go out on a date tomorrow?" "Are you confessing?" "No, it's just for fun." I guess I can go the following day." I met up with her at a cafe. We were sipping coffee. We talked a lot and had loads of fun. Shopping, restaurants, and then we decided to go to a movie. After we finished the movie, it was already night time. "Gosh, it's already 10. I've got to go home soon," I said, looking at my phone. "Can we sit at the park and look at the stars for a few minutes?" Laura asked. "Yeah, sure. You sure do love stargazing." We sat next to each other on a bench in the park. We both looked up at the bright crescent moon. I looked at Laura from the corner of my eye. She was completely fascinated. She caught me looking at her and smiled. She leaned against my shoulder and put her hand on mine. I like you, Aiden." She gave me a peck on the lips. Sorry, I didn't mean to dash." I leaned over, took her glasses off and locked my lips onto hers. She was surprised, but she put her arms around my neck. I put my hands on her cheeks and we kissed. "That was my first kiss," Laura said, blushing. "I've really fallen for you." I hugged her. "I've fallen for you too. Here's your second kiss." We kissed again. Story: The First Boy I Loved. Once upon a time, in a small, picturesque town, there was a charming little school where children's laughter filled the air, and dreams were born every day. In this school, there were two students, Emma and Jack, both in the 5th grade. Emma was a bright, cheerful girl with a heartwarming smile and a love for books. Jack, on the other hand, was a shy boy with a passion for drawing and a talent for making people laugh. Their story began on a crisp autumn morning. The school bell had just rung, and students were bustling about, getting ready for class. Emma, carrying a stack of books, tripped over a loose stone on the path and fell, scattering her books everywhere. Jack, who was nearby, rushed to help her. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, offering his hand to help her up. Emma looked up, slightly embarrassed but grateful. "Yes, thank you," she replied, taking his hand. As Jack helped Emma gather her books, they started talking and discovered they had a lot in common. Both loved reading adventure stories and drawing imaginary worlds. From that day on, they became fast friends. Every day after school, Emma and Jack would sit under a large oak tree in the schoolyard, sharing stories and drawing together. Their friendship grew stronger, and they became inseparable. Emma loved how Jack could make her laugh, and Jack admired Emma's intelligence and kindness. One winter afternoon, the school announced a talent show. Emma and Jack decided to participate together. They spent weeks preparing a skit based on their favorite adventure story. Emma wrote the script, and Jack designed the costumes and props. They practiced every day, laughing and encouraging each other. The night of the talent show arrived, and the school auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents. Emma and Jack stood backstage, nervously holding hands. "We can do this," Emma whispered, squeezing Jack's hand. Jack nodded, smiling. Together. Their performance was a huge success. The audience laughed and cheered, and Emma and Jack beamed with pride. After the show, they received a standing ovation and a special award for their creativity and teamwork. As they walked home that night, under a sky full of stars, Emma and Jack felt a bond stronger than ever. They knew they had something special, a friendship that would last a lifetime. Years passed, and Emma and Jack grew up. They went to different high schools and then colleges, but they never lost touch. They continued to share their dreams and support each other through life's ups and downs. One summer, after they had both graduated from college, they returned to their hometown for a visit. Walking through the old schoolyard, they found themselves under the same oak tree where their friendship had blossomed. "Remember our talent show?" Jack asked, smiling. Emma laughed. "How could I forget? It was the best night of my life." Jack took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Emma, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. I think I've loved you since that day we met." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She looked into Jack's eyes and saw the same kindness and warmth that had always been there. "I love you too, Jack," she whispered. Under the old oak tree, where their innocent, school-age love began, Emma and Jack shared their first kiss, sealing a promise of love that had started with a simple act of kindness and had grown into something beautiful and everlasting. And so, their story continued, a testament to the power of friendship and love that started in the heart of a small, picturesque town and blossomed into a lifetime of happiness together. Story: Love Finds a Way. My 35F relationship with my husband, 28M, shouldn't work, but it does. We've been together for 5 years, married for 2. We met at a pub. My ex and I divorced, and we'd been split for just about a year at that point. I had been with my ex for 3 years, we'd dated for 2 years and were married for 1 year. Shortly after we got married, he started acting really controlling. I was in love, so I didn't see it at first. He was always gaslighting me, criticizing me, he was always micromanaging me. The biggest thing was he always looked through my phone. When we split, my ex kept trying to contact me. I blocked his number and his Instagram, but he kept making fake accounts and messaging me. When he figured out I wasn't going to respond, he stopped for a bit. He started occasionally sending nasty messages. Anyway, I was sitting at the bar, and my husband was sitting a couple seats away from me. I had a rough couple days, and my ex messaged me. It was so hurtful, and that coupled with how the last couple of days had gone, I started crying. My husband noticed and asked if I was all right. We started talking, and he let me vent. We traded numbers and we met up a bit over the next couple months. We dated. It was essentially just us meeting for dinner once every couple weeks. We met at my place once and I told him about how I was finding it hard to trust people. Then he opened up about his parents. I don't want to air his issues out on here. All I can say is they were really abusive. Him telling me that gave me a new perspective about him. My parents were abusive too, not as bad as his, but still. It's something we connected about. We still continued to meet up, and every time I felt closer to him until I eventually asked him out on an actual date. We dated for 3 years until he proposed. He's an awesome partner. He's the complete opposite of my ex. Our relationship isn't perfect, none are, but he listens to me and we talk things out when we disagree. He said he doesn't want kids because he doesn't want to be like his parents, and I feel the same. I feel like our relationship shouldn't work because of our age gap, but we're still going strong 5 years later. Story: my ex ruined my relationship, and I want to warn his new girl. My ex, whom I'll call James, and I broke up last June 21st, 2023. I fell out of love, and James told me to split up. I didn't know what to do that time because I begged for him to rethink his decision, and maybe if we kept the communication, it would turn out great, or the sparks will come back. He insisted and we split up. A week after, James started hard launching a girl in his social medias. I don't really care because I've already fell out of love, but it's like he's been playing with me. A month passed and he contacted me, begging to get back together. Even asked for his friends to chat me to get back together with him. I didn't, of course. August of 2023, I thought James finally learned his lesson and I got together with an old fling, whom I'll call S, and I only got together until September of 2023 because James was sneakily telling S about everything I've said about him in the past. For context, S is like a balance of light and dark. When we were together in middle school, S and I would constantly fight. He would randomly ask me how to court a girl knowing damn well I liked him. Back to the story, I did say some horrible things about S to James, but I never knew that he would screenshot the messages and send it to S. I was shocked and also disappointed. I apologized to S, but he insisted of splitting up. James made up stories of how S is a cheater, and every guy I point would have a cheating background. Before breakup, I gave James a raw amethyst. Now that we broke up, I've been asked him to give it back for months. And even after we broke up and lost contact, he still didn't give it back to me. It was a raw amethyst that I entrusted to him, but since we split up, I want it back, it's valuable. He's not responding to my messages anymore and acts like I don't exist. Now, James is courting a girl, whom I'll call K. K is a very nice person and I don't want her to be with someone like James. K, if you're seeing this, he's told me in the past that you're not his type, and that he doesn't want to be involved with you. All I'm asking is for you is to run, don't let him try and court you. He's the worst. James once made sexual comments about me to his friend, and I was thankful that his friend didn't tolerate James' behavior. James also told that same friend that I have been depressed and would constantly H4RM myself, which is true, but he was making jokes about me and showing how insensitive he was towards my feelings and my S31FH4RM. He's a liar and someone you should not trust. Never let a guy like him come close to you. And he also lied about his size. He said he's 6-inch and when I saw it, it was smaller than my marker. Disappointing. It won't reach far, K, don't bother. Also, I found out from a friend that he's been telling everyone about our intimacy, which he promised to never let anyone know. K, you deserve better. Story: a little love story. Freshman year of high school, this girl Taylor asked if I wanted to date her. I said no, that's fine, I have a girlfriend. She asked again, and I said no. 2 weeks later, I broke up with my girlfriend, and my friend Jerry was asking me who I could mess with next because I was lonely. He brought up Taylor, and I said she already tried to get at me. I'm cool off her. He laughed and asked me to repeat what I said in a sarcastic voice. I did and didn't think much of it. 3 weeks later, I found out they're talking, and she said I lied about that for some reason. I didn't really care and let them be. They dated for 8 months, and Jerry was a close friend. A year and a half later, after they broke up, Taylor and I started talking as friends. Our conversations took a provocative turn and occasionally became sexual. It grew from that to meeting parents, doing relationship things, talking 24/7, saying I love you, and seeming to care a lot. Jerry had no idea, but I thought he wouldn't care. One day, about 4 months ago, Jerry, Fred, another close friend, and I took acid. We had a conversation concerning Taylor and how good she was in bed, unprovoked from Jerry. He showed me videos of him having sex with her, unprovoked. He still didn't know we spoke. He bet me $100 that I couldn't have sex with her in a month. We were all high, and he was calling me a pussy, so I said okay, I'll do it. I told Taylor about the whole thing. She hated me at first, but still came over because I was honest. Jerry found out about the whole situation in a PlayStation party 2 days after he made the bet. He was eavesdropping on me and Tyler, another close friend, talking about it. I was asking Tyler if I should tell Jerry or not because I didn't know if it would hurt his feelings, or if I should not have her come over at all and forget about it. Tyler said just tell him, and I said okay, I will. Jerry ended up trying to coerce me into saying it the next day because he knew. I told him about it, and he said I was wrong for keeping it a secret when I was looking out for his feelings. She was reading his texts to me, and he was obviously hurt. I was looking out for him. She still came over. My mom busted in, and she had an anxiety attack, so we did not have sex. We cried together about everything. She left early due to the anxiety, but still talked to me as if we were in a relationship afterward. She tells me there's a low chance we're gonna have an actual relationship, but she constantly tells me there is a chance and does things like look at apartments, dogs, and baby names, all that sweet stuff. She said I can't let them know she's talking to me still, so I kept it under wraps. They were still acting funny towards me, so I cut my close friends off for her. She was all I had. She cut me off 3 weeks ago, saying I didn't give her enough attention. Jerry used to cheat on her multiple times, and she would still come back to him. And she stopped talking to me because of attention? We're both in a bad place mentally, and she's gonna break me down after building me up? She's so grimy and carefree about the situation too. Won't tell me a word of why she did it. Now I'm friendless and alone with nothing to look forward to. I told her many times she was what I looked forward to, and she said it was sweet and she would never leave me. Just to say it's my fault she's leaving and she did nothing wrong, all females disgust me. She took a year and a half to convince me she was different, and she broke my trust completely. If you have a girlfriend now, cheat on her and break her heart. For the boys. All girls are the same inside, no matter how much they portray being different. They will abandon you without a second thought. Heartless creatures. Story: The Story of First Love. Just read a touching story about a person's first love and decided to tell mine. I left a comment in that thread but will expand it here. We were both 17 and in California. She dumped me after a year or so for a guy she worked with. I went on to college, but every now and then, she would find me through mutual friends when she got dumped. She always did the same things, called me all the time or wanted to hang out and, of course, wondered what it would be like if we got back together. I had no intentions of getting back together and would only hang out when I had nothing better to do, and only as a friend, preferably with other friends. She would always try to make it seem as if we were a couple, though. One night after an outing with friends, she didn't want to go home, as it was kind of far from where we were, and asked to stay at my place. This was an apartment I shared with another student, a great guy, but we had our own rooms and a living room with a comfortable couch that many friends had crashed on. When we got there, she went right to my room and started undressing. I excused myself to the bathroom and closed the door. I didn't go back to the room, I just slept on the couch. I really didn't need the emotional roller coaster that she was, distracting me from studying. I took her home the next morning, and she acted like everything was normal. After that, I didn't hear from her again. But that's how it always was. Eventually, she would disappear because she would get back together with whoever. After college, I got a good internship in Florida. That led to a great career and repayment of my college loans, a starter house, and a decent car. At 30, I met a nice, never married, no kids woman, not that there is anything wrong with that, who I have been happily married to for 23 years. I'm 53 now with 2 adult sons who have solid careers. Then, about 2 months ago, out of the blue, she called me at work and wanted to reconnect. I'm not sure how she found my info. I know there are ways, but I have done my best to leave a small footprint on the internet. Probably it's because my boss insists on posting our names and positions on our website. Anyway, I told her I wasn't interested and I was sorry. She tried to play it off like I didn't know who she was. I assured her I did know. There was a long pause, then I asked her to please not call me anymore. I heard her sob and I hung up. Later, I got curious and asked a friend to look her up on Facebook. I don't have any social media other than where I can remain anonymous. To me, long-lost friends are long-lost for a reason. Anyway, it seems she recently divorced from the guy she dumped me for and lives about an hour or so away from me now. On her Facebook page, she had pics of herself and her adult son, and a few pics of her son's wedding with her ex on the other side of the room from her. I felt a little sorry that her life is a mess in her 50s, that these were her decisions that led her there. I'm not saying it would have been any better if we had gotten back together. I wouldn't change my life after 30 for anything. Yeah, I did a few things in my 20s I'm not proud of. Anyway, my wife would never accept reconnecting with my ex, and I would never do that to her. I did tell my wife about it, as I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Sometimes unsaid, seemingly trivial events can get taken out of context. My wife shows me her phone and asks if it was this person. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. The display of her phone shows my ex's name and number. My wife tells me the woman asked for me, but my wife told her it was the wrong number and hung up. My wife does not like me talking to women she doesn't know, and some she does. She thought the whole thing was funny in the end. Side note, I took that girl to my junior prom and still have the pic. My wife has seen it and could care less about it, but when she saw my senior prom pic, she attempted to rip it up. Sigh, because the girl in my senior prom pic was Asian, and my wife is also Asian. I just pretend to understand how that works. Story: how a 4-year relationship ended in a night. My 28-year-old fiancé, 28-year-old, of 4.5 years recently called of our engagement after an argument about her college diploma. For context, we have been dating 4.5 years, and of that time we have been engaged 6 months. I proposed last January. From the day we met, she has been in school and originally was living with her family while she did just that. No job, no other responsibilities. Just school. That being said, as we progressed over time and she slowly began to spend less time at her family's house and more time with me, I became more responsible for our living expenses as she had no income other than financial aid a few times a year. Since I am active duty military, my housing is covered for the most part depending on location and rank, and I lived in a one-bed, one-bath that was easy to incorporate her into when she'd come and visit for the weekend or so. About a year later, I bought my first house and had roommates, which made finances much easier. Additionally, she eventually got a part-time job which helped her cover her own expenses better and even offer some help with bills. However, for the most part one was still majorly responsible for our expenses as these part-time jobs never seemed to last, but I was okay with it because I loved her and believed I was helping her achieve her goal of a degree. Several years later, a few months ago we were having a discussion about moving on to base housing. I sold my house prior to moving for my next tour and have since been living in apartments again. For anyone who is unfamiliar with military terms, base housing is just as it sounds, a house in a neighborhood built within the perimeter of the base. Since our time together we got a dog, and often wished he could have a yard again for him. Additionally, we had some real close friends who also lived on base, and it would make our very frequent weekend BBQs much more enjoyable if we were able to just walk home rather than drive 30 minutes, not to mention more space, a guest room for friends and family to visit, just overall a better situation. There was a catch, however. In order to be eligible for base housing, we would need to be legally married. Something that is fairly common in military relationships, a courthouse-style wedding, although not always for the best reasons. Since we had already been engaged half a year, and I was due to deploy later on this year, holding off any real wedding planning, alongside her graduation coming in the fall, we had discussed the benefits of having a quick courthouse elopement prior to my deployment so I could share my service benefits with her, healthcare, family services, etc., and a huge plus was the pay raise, about $1,000 extra a month, that we had talked about saving and using for our actual wedding whenever we decided what we wanted to do. This wasn't the only time I had brought up progressing this way, as the benefits IMO greatly outweighed any risks. We had plenty of dialogue in the past as well that led me to believe she felt the same way, and in fact wanted to be official just as much as I did, aside from all the things discussed above. I brought it up casually as I usually would. A coworker had just told me about some openings in some of the nicer houses on base. I told her about them and she was very interested. I then went on to remind her that in order for us to apply, we would first need to be legally married. For the most part one was the only one who ever brought this up, and it never really bothered me because up to this point I had no reason to believe she wanted anything different. Instead of seeming excited and willing to move forward, she began to complain about things like our marriage certificate being from a state she doesn't like, saying she'd now rather wait until we could go somewhere exotic and out of the country. This isn't something I was completely against, but it would defeat the purpose of all the reasons and benefits we had been discussing previously. I tried to reason with her, but I'll have to admit I was hurt. I was 100% willing to make this official and marry my best friend, benefits aside. I had partially hoped she'd match my energy there. Frustrated and confused, I began to seek answers. I wanted to know why I was openly 100% committed, and it felt like I wasn't getting the same in return. I began to ask for reasons or explanations on why I was feeling this way, and if there was something I was missing that may be holding her back. I remember specifically asking about school, because it was made clear in the very beginning of our relationship that school was above all the most important thing to her. To be clear, I also supported this. So much to the point where if she needed books and couldn't afford them, I ordered them for her. Her school was 100% online, so I was paying monthly for absolute screaming internet for her. I would work full days and come home and prepare dinner, grocery shop, clean, etc. You guys get it. I was her #1 fan, and supported her and loved her though all the failed exams, birthdays and events missed because she's in a group meeting, and constantly promoted positivity and clarity regarding any uncertainty about her degree plan and future. I was there and did everything I could. I am confident in that even as I type this now. When we got to this topic, Il cut right to it. I asked her if she was hesitant because of anything to do with school or her upcoming graduation. This is where she told me that she hadn't really thought much of it, but now that she does, she doesn't want to get married prior to her graduation because she doesn't want my last name to be the one on her diploma. She told me that if it was that way, she felt as if it would take away from her and her accomplishments alone. She has been doubted before by other family, and if it didn't say her name it wouldn't feel as good to prove those doubters wrong. Something like that. This hit home, probably harder due to what felt like, rejection earlier on the legal marriage. All I was trying to do was ensure one. She was taken care of while I'm away from home and can't help, and 2. Progress our relationship to what seemed like our next organic step and what had been mutually desired and agreed upon. This causes a huge argument, as she begins to label me as controlling for not seeing why it had to be her way, and we spent the entire night making attempts to show where we had been hurt by the other. Eventually we had made up, found common ground, enough to shower together and spend some close time in bed. Sadly, it wasn't enough. The next day she came home in tears, informed me that everything from last night wasn't sitting well with her, and that she was moving back home and calling off our engagement. I was handed back the ring and began to try to ask questions. What changed? I thought last night we were okay, etc. She told me she had nothing else to say to me, but through the tears and packing managed to look me in the eyes and say these last words: even if I realize I'm making the biggest mistake of my life, it is something I am going to live with because there's no coming back. She left me and our dog that night after taking everything she cared enough about and packing it into her car. It's been a few months since this all went down. All of this time has been no contact. I think it also needs to be said that I never expected her to have my last name on her diploma. It was something I never even thought about until the heat of the argument. I think what really got me, what really cut deep, was hearing her say her and her accomplishments alone, while looking me dead in my face like I haven't done shit to help her get there. Again, all Eve ever known her as was a student. I accepted the financial burden that was trying to build a life with someone in that stage of life. It was never about me expecting that, but I guess also I had believed that if the roles were reversed, if I were that student being taken care of single-handedly by this person I loved more than anything, said yes to marrying, knowing the sacrifices and difficulty of taking care of someone who can hardly maintain a part-time job, maybe I wouldn't try to act like I did this on my own. I was very yes-oriented. I made almost every important decision thinking of how it could help us or benefit us. I think I set myself up for failure assuming I would have that same level of commitment in return. I also know I took it much harder given circumstances, but never would have guessed it would tear apart a 4-year relationship for wanting to feel appreciated and recognized for IMO going above and beyond anyone else in her life to help her achieve her goal. Story: A First Love to Remem. I, currently 20F, had this friend, we'll call him Zero for this story, that I had known since my freshman year of high school. We were really close. To put it simply, we both love anime and Vocaloid. We would watch songs together during lunch period and sit next to each other in Japanese class. He was 2 grades higher than me, but I didn't care. He had always been there for me for freshman and part of sophomore year, because school got cancelled due to the you-know-what in 2020. He would give me and my family presents on special occasions, and we'd do all kinds of things outside of school, going to each other's houses, going to the movies, going to anime conventions, you name it. He was very supportive as well, and was always there for me whenever I needed somebody to talk to. And I was there for him as well. He was like a brother to me, although I have a brother myself. He also got along very well with the rest of my family. It was like he was an additional family member to them. However, I should have known these times were too good to last. Fast forward to October 2022, my mom tells me that Zero texted her. He has her number because previously, she gave it to him when we went to cons in case of emergency, saying that he has a crush on me. She wanted to know how I felt about it. I told her that I didn't see Zero the same way, and that he's just a good friend to me. My mom assured me that even if I see Zero romantically, she's all for it, but reminded me that I shouldn't get serious about dating until I finish college, because according to her, education comes first. Other than that, she was pretty much fine with the whole idea. I will get into detail about their conversation later. Now, Zero has been through a lot of different girlfriends. Even a boyfriend. He's been open to me about the different people he's dated, and why he broke up with them. He also has a very confusing life, bouncing from job to job, trying to find a place to live, many things that I can't keep up with. He also told me he has bipolar disorder and has had ugly meltdowns in the past, and how badly he's been bullied in his childhood. He told me that I was his very first friend he met in my high school, the school he transferred to where he met me, and that I saved his life in a way. But I think after my mom informed me that Zero had a crush on me, Zero admitted it to me, but he said he gave up on the crush because he just saw me as a friend, the same way I did. I thought it made sense, because he was seeing a girl at the time. Or maybe he wasn't, I can't remember, honestly. After that conversation, Zero messaged me somewhere in June 2023 that he thinks my mom is pushing me and Zero to be a couple. I was taken aback by this kind of statement. There's no way my mom would do such a thing. I said these things to him, and he said to me that he would rather not have me talk about it with my parents. He didn't really explain why, maybe it was awkward for him. But I still said I would talk about it with them. He said he wouldn't recommend it. Still, I needed to know if it was true or not. A few days later, I spoke to my mom about it. She said, "What? No way. I never said anything like that. He's lying. He's being a troublemaker. I would never force a boy on you." Going back to the conversation my mom had with Zero, I saw the messages. My mom lets me use her phone sometimes and doesn't mind when I look at her messages. Zero was talking about how he's had a crush on me ever since high school, and nowhere in the messages did my mom indicate that she wanted us to be a couple. It was mostly just, "I don't mind if you date her. But if it does happen, I'm going to establish some ground rules. You can't be out after 9 p.m., you have to tell us where you're going." And all that stuff. She was pretty chill with it and didn't shame him, force him, or anything. It was just being open to it, but also being a mom and making sure that the two of us were in a good position to date before we ever got into it. That was the only time they had ever texted each other, as there were no more messages beyond October 2022. So I texted Zero and told him, "Hey." I told my mom about it, and she said she never said anything like that. I'm not trying to call you a liar, but is there some sort of proof that indicates that she ever forced us to be a couple? He then texted me back, quote, "So, let me get this straight. You ignored my feelings, and now you expect me to help you? Some friend you are." I was taken aback by this, as I had no idea he was going to get this angry over it. I was expecting him to be compliant over it, not this. He then says, "I'm no tool, so I don't appreciate being used." Normally, when people do this kind of thing, I turn them into social experiments. However, out of respect for all the years we've had together, I won't. But never contact me again. Goodbye. I then got so panicked. I frantically texted him to please listen to me, to which he replied, "You have 5 minutes." I then apologized for telling my mom about this, as I just wanted to know if it was true about the forcing thing. That I'm sorry for hurting his feelings and all that stuff. He then said, "Okay, but here's the thing. Because of what you did, you put me in a tough position with your parents, so therefore, I'm not coming over anymore. We can only be friends virtually." I didn't think much of it, as I thought he would soon get over it. He pretty much just accepted me back as a friend. We talked normally again, as if nothing ever happened. Until I decided to tell him, "I still can't believe I made that mistake." He told him, "You're still my friend and I forgive you. I'm over it. You just have to forgive yourself." I told him I'm tired of the tension between my family and him. He told me, "There's no tension. I just won't come over anymore. My pride won't let me." I didn't understand it. What does he mean by pride? I let it be. Days later, I asked him, what would it take for you to come back? He then said, to be honest, I don't think anything will. It's hard to explain, but my pride won't let me see you. I told him that my parents aren't really mad at him, it was all just one big misunderstanding, but still, he said, all I can say is, I just can't go over there. It feels wrong. I figured maybe he's just embarrassed, so I let it be again. I had tried unsuccessfully multiple times to convince him that nothing is wrong, he's welcome to come see me and my family again, but still, he kept saying he wouldn't see us again. Aside from that, we still had normal conversations. I thought maybe he needed to hear it from my parents that everything was fine, not from me. So I asked my dad to call/text him. My dad did that, but there was no answer. He then texted him, hey Zero, how are you? I just want to see how you're doing, as it's been a while. No response. Days passed, and my dad told me Zero still hasn't replied. My dad then said, oh well. If he doesn't want to talk to us, that's fine. That was the part when I decided to tell Zero everything about how I felt. I told him I was tired of his excuses to not see us again, that I just wanted our friendship to be back the way it was, and that it's like he just doesn't understand that nothing is wrong between us. I also mentioned that I didn't understand how he got so upset over the fact that I told my mom about the forcing thing. That I couldn't deal with it anymore. I just wanted things to be back to normal. His responses didn't really make it much better, but he cleared up some confusions. Or so I thought. First off, he mentioned that he said his pride wouldn't let him see me because it's an abstract concept that you wouldn't understand, and that if anybody asks about why we don't see each other, that I should say it's because of our family's cultural differences and such, and it still made no sense to me. He also said that it wasn't like he never wanted to see me. He just didn't want to see my parents. He would still ask me how they were doing in the past, he just didn't want to see them in person or speak to them. He never said that he didn't want to see my parents, it was always you. He said he'd be open to hanging out if there was a situation where he didn't have to see my parents. He stated he was embarrassed about the entire situation. Normal embarrassment, he can get over, but this, he just couldn't. He ended it by saying that this is just something that's not under any of our control, and that I should accept it. He said maybe, just maybe, he would get the guts to see my parents again, but it's a slim possibility. So we continued things from here. However, us meeting in person never happened due to things that happened in both our lives. He got a new girlfriend with whom he helped move in with him, and became busier than ever. We rarely talked through these times. He said he didn't go through with his plans to hang out because of his new job and all the other stuff. So I let it go. For the rest of the months leading up to my breaking point, we talked on and off. I even got to chat with his girlfriend at some points, and she was friendly. But I never told her about the incident between me and Zero because I didn't want to start any drama. I then started to realize that this kind of friendship wasn't sustainable for me anymore. As much as I loved talking to Zero, I couldn't be friends with someone who wanted to leave a scar on such a beautiful relationship he had with my parents, and to just throw it all away because of one incident that may make sense in his mind, but no sense in mine. I thought maybe there's no point in continuing with this friendship. It was just making me sad, being constantly reminded that this person is no longer coming to my house frequently, to make jokes with my family and play with my pet cats. It felt wrong just to be a virtual friend to him. I was tired of making myself feel miserable about this part of our friendship that was missing. So in June of this year, I sent him a message saying that I couldn't do this anymore, I think it's best we go our separate ways, and it's obvious that we have our differences. He pretty much accepted the fact that I didn't want to continue with the friendship anymore, and we ended things with peace. I always wonder to myself if I was at fault for making our friendship end the way it did. Part of me feels like I never should have told my mom about what Zero told me, where he thought my mom was pushing us to be a couple. Maybe then our friendship would have remained how it used to be. I even told my parents that I decided to end things with Zero, and while they accepted my decision, they reminded me that I have the right to cut someone out if I feel like they're not the right friend for me. In this case, Zero's unwillingness to make up to my family, to let the past go, for whatever reason in his mind was just not doing it for me, albeit we did everything we could to assure him everything was fine. I've talked to some of my other friends about this story, and each and every one of them have said that it's the stupidest thing that Zero did. That no friend would do such a thing over something so trivial. They even suggested that Zero lied about my mom saying that to him just so he could date me, and now he can't look at me because he got caught in his stupid lie. They also told me it's best I let him go, but at the time, I didn't want to, as I just wanted to give Zero the benefit of the doubt. But as time passed by, I thought, what's the point of trying to water a dead plant? Maybe I should have let Zero end things right then and there last year. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.